Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive.
Mm.
We're really excited about this one. This is all about autism education,
Yeah, looking at this article by Dr. Jaime Hoerricks, who's a special education teacher.
right? Unmasking the neo-colonial agenda in autism education. How native ads and biased research undermine effective practices.
Catchy title?
Yeah, and it's a really fascinating premise, right? This idea that certain evidence-based practices that we kind of take for granted in autism education might actually be driven by, like a profit motive, like almost this new form of colonialism.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold claim, and Hoerricks uses a really specific example to kind of illustrate this point. They take aim at an article from EdSource, which is an education news outlet.
Okay, so what's the issue with EdSource?
Well, so Hoerricks argues that this piece from EdSource reads more like a native ad, like disguised as a regular article.
Huh.
And it's really pushing these two particular programs, autism-focused intervention resources and modules, or FHRMM, and then the California Autism Professional Training Network, or CAPTAIN.
Okay, I mean, lots of organizations promote their programs, right?
Mhm.
What makes this so different or so problematic?
Well, the problem is that the article presents these two programs as like the ultimate solutions for autism education
Yeah.
without really acknowledging other approaches or potential drawbacks.
Interesting.
And then when you consider that EdSource actually has financial ties to organizations that support and profit from Affirm and Captain, it kind of raises some serious questions about, objectivity and potential conflicts of interest.
Yeah, that definitely adds another layer to this.
Yeah.
But the article goes beyond just this one example, right, with EdSource.
It does, yeah. Hoerricks kind of uses that as a jumping off point to really
Yeah.
tackle this whole idea of, what we even consider evidence-based in the first place.
Right.
Like throughout the article, they put evidence-based practices in quotation marks,
Oh, interesting.
which kind of signals the skepticism, right?
Yeah, like whose evidence are we talking about here? Who benefits from these definitions?
Oh, exactly. And they specifically call out a report from the National Clearinghouse on Autism Evidence and Practice, or NCEEP, for excluding certain practices that a lot of people consider to be very effective.
Okay, and one of those practices is direct instruction.
Yes.
So for those of us who aren't educators, can you explain what direct instruction is and why it's causing such a stir?
Sure. So direct instruction is a teaching method that's really focused on explicit structured learning. So, think clearly stating your objectives, breaking skills down into manageable steps, lots of guided practice, providing immediate feedback. And, it's been shown to be very, very effective for many students, including those with autism.
And it sounds like Hoerricks has some personal experience with this too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They talk
Good.
about using a specific direct instruction model called self-regulated strategy development, or SRSD, and seeing, amazing results with their students. They even conducted a study where students' reading comprehension scores dramatically improved after using SRSD.
Wow, that's compelling. So if it's so effective, why would this method be left out of a report on evidence-based practices?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And, this is where it all ties back into Hoerricks' central critique of the whole system.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Lay it on me.
So the article suggests that the interventions that are touted as evidence-based in this NCEEP report often come from companies that profit from them. It's like the self-fulfilling prophecy. They fund the research that supports their products,
Okay.
and then that research gets labeled as, evidence-based, which leads to more sales, more profits.
Right, so it becomes this cycle where certain interventions get promoted,
Mhm.
not necessarily because they're the most effective, but because they're the most profitable.
Exactly, and that connects back to the EdSource critique, too.
Right.
Because it's this potential profit motive that leads Hoerricks to bring up this very bold idea of a neo-colonial agenda within autism education.
Okay, so now we're getting into the really provocative part of the article.
Yeah.
What does Hoerricks mean by neo-colonial in this context?
So essentially, they're arguing that these companies are profiting off the challenges faced by autistic individuals and their families
Okay.
by pushing their interventions as the only evidence-based solutions and creating a dependence on their products and services.
And that's where the colonial aspect comes in.
Exactly. It's about power dynamics and control. And Hoerricks contrasts this with direct instruction, which aims to empower students to learn and function independently.
Right.
They see direct instruction as a way of breaking free from the cycle of dependence and giving individuals more autonomy.
Yeah. It's a stark comparison for sure. I mean, it makes you think of these companies almost like modern-day colonizers profiting from a vulnerable population.
Right. That's the essence of Hoerricks' argument.
Mhm.
It's not just about these individual practices. It's a critique of a system that they believe prioritizes profit over people.
This is definitely giving me a lot to think about. How does this article fit into the broader conversation about education reform, and especially the role of private companies in public education?
That's a great question, and it's a very timely one because there's this huge debate happening right now about privatization in education, and Hoerricks' article really shines a light on this debate within the specific context of autism education.
Yeah.
It raises these tough questions about who benefits from certain policies and practices and whether those practices truly serve the best interests of autistic students.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, and we've only just scratched the surface. There's a lot more to delve into. So let's take a quick pause here and come back to dive deeper into this thought-provoking article.
We've been exploring this idea of a potential like neo-colonial agenda in autism education.
Right.
Like the term Dr. Hoerricks uses to really critique what they see as this system, that prioritizes profit over the needs of autistic individuals.
It's definitely a thought-provoking concept. It really challenges some assumptions. I mean, we all want what's best for these kids, right?
Yeah.
But this article is making me question, you know, are good intentions enough?
Right.
Are we inadvertently supporting a system that might be exploiting vulnerabilities for profit?
Yeah, that's a really valid concern, and it underscores the need for, critical thinking when it comes to information, especially in education where the stakes are so high.
Absolutely.
It's easy to be swayed by catchy slogans or programs that are presented as the ultimate solution, but we really need to dig deeper.
So how do we become more discerning? Like, what are some key takeaways you think our listeners should be considering after, diving into this article with us?
Well, I think the first takeaway is just recognizing that we're all bombarded with information constantly, right?
Yeah.
And not all of it is created equal.
No.
We can't just passively absorb what we see or hear, especially when financial incentives are involved.
So it's a call to action to be more media literate, to really evaluate the sources we're getting our information from, considering potential biases and who might be profiting.
Exactly. And then the second takeaway kind of builds on that. Hoerricks makes a compelling case for direct instruction as a valuable approach for autistic learners.
Right.
Now, it's not about rejecting all other interventions outright,
Right.
but understanding the full range of options and recognizing that what works best can vary greatly from individual to individual.
Yeah, I appreciate that the article doesn't try to paint things in black and white.
Right.
It's not about saying one approach is inherently bad and another is inherently good.
Yeah.
Instead, it encourages a more nuanced understanding of the complexities of autism education.
Exactly. And I think that leads us to the biggest takeaway of all,
Okay.
which is the importance of advocating for systems that prioritize the needs and well-being of autistic individuals.
Okay.
So this means, questioning the status quo, pushing back against practices that might be exploitative and demanding better for everyone involved.
That's a powerful message. It's not enough to just passively accept things as they are. We need to actively engage in shaping the systems that affect our lives and the lives of our children.
Exactly. And we can't forget that autistic people themselves are the true experts on their own experiences.
Yeah.
Their voices need to be front and center in any discussion about autism education and support.
Yeah, this all ties back to that concept of neo-colonialism, right?
Yeah.
Empowering individuals to have more autonomy and control over their own lives, rather than being reliant on systems that might not always have their best interests at heart.
Exactly. And remember, this article is just one perspective on a very complex issue. It's sparked a fascinating conversation and it's given us a lot to think about, but the learning doesn't stop here.
So where do we go from here? What are some resources or avenues our listener can explore to, learn more about direct instruction or the broader issues raised in the article like neocolonialism and the privatization of education?
Well, there are many paths to explore. For those wanting to delve deeper into direct instruction, I'd recommend checking out organizations dedicated to this approach.
Right.
They offer a wealth of information, including research articles, training materials, practical tips for implementation.
And what about resources for those interested in the broader social and political context surrounding autism education?
Yeah, the internet is a great resource for this, but it's crucial to be discerning with your sources. Look for articles and books from reputable academics, researchers, and activists who specialize in education policy, disability rights, and social justice.
Okay, any specific starting points you'd recommend?
Well, for a deeper understanding of neocolonialism, I'd suggest exploring the works of post-colonial thinkers like Edward Said and Frantz Fanon. Their writings offer really critical insights into the legacy of colonialism and its ongoing impact on various aspects of society, including education.
That's a great starting point.
Hmm.
And for a more contemporary perspective on the intersection of neocolonialism and disability, I'd recommend looking into the work of disability studies. Scholars like Nirmala Irevels and Subini Ansianama,
Oh, great
they
recommendation.
offer powerful critiques of how traditional views of disability often reinforce colonial power structures.
Fantastic recommendations. And don't forget the wealth of knowledge within the autistic community itself. There are numerous autistic self-advocates who are sharing their experiences and insights through books, blogs, and social media platforms.
Yeah.
Their perspectives are invaluable in understanding the complexities of autism and advocating for meaningful change.
It's amazing how one article can open up so many avenues for exploration.
It really is.
It's a reminder that learning is an ongoing journey, and we need to be constantly seeking out new information and perspectives.
Absolutely. And remember, this deep dive is tailored specifically for you, our listener. As you continue to explore these issues, we encourage you to think critically about the information you encounter and to connect it to your own experiences and understanding of the world.
We're excited to see where your learning journey takes you from here. What are your thoughts so far? What's resonating with you the most? It's amazing, isn't it, how, exploring just one article like this one by Dr. Hoerricks can
Yeah.
spark so many, thought-provoking questions about autism education and even, broader social issues.
Yeah, it really highlights how interconnected everything is, how seemingly isolated practices or policies can reflect larger systemic forces.
Totally. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, right?
Yeah.
We started with a critique of one article, and now we're talking about neo-colonialism, power dynamics, the
Right.
role of private companies in education. It's a lot.
It is a lot to process, but it's important that we engage with these complex issues, especially when we're talking about something as important as the education of future generations.
Right.
We can't just settle for surface level understandings. We need to really dig deep and ask these tough questions and challenge the status quo.
And that's what I really appreciate about Hoerricks' approach.
Oh, sure.
They're not afraid to call out potential problems and push us to think critically about the systems that we've created.
Mm.
It's a call to action, not just for educators, but for all of us.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping a more just and equitable world.
Right.
And that includes, advocating for the rights and well-being of autistic individuals.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some tangible steps our listener can take to move beyond critique and start creating real change?
Well, as we've been discussing, education is a powerful lever for social transformation.
Yes.
So one really important step is advocating for policies and practices that promote genuine inclusion and equity for all learners.
That means ensuring that all students, regardless of their background or neurodiversity, have access to high-quality instruction, appropriate support, and learning environments that really value their unique strengths and needs.
Absolutely. And it also means moving away from this kind of deficit-based model of disability, which often focuses on what students can't do,
Right.
and moving towards a more strengths-based approach that celebrates neurodiversity and empowers autistic individuals to reach their full potential.
And Hoerricks' emphasis on direct instruction and its focus on fostering independence seems to really align with this strengths-based approach, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Direct instruction, when implemented, thoughtfully and ethically, can be a really powerful tool for empowering autistic learners to develop these essential skills and self-advocacy strategies.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to remember that it's just one approach, right? It's
Mhm.
not a one-size-fits-all solution.
So the key is to create a diverse and flexible educational landscape where
Exactly.
different approaches can be explored and tailored to individual needs.
Yeah. Exactly. And this brings us back to the importance of listening to and centering the voices of autistic people themselves.
Yeah.
They are the true experts on their own experiences.
Absolutely.
And their insights are invaluable in shaping effective and respectful educational practices.
So what are some ways that we can amplify those voices and ensure that their perspectives are truly heard and valued?
Well, one important step is to actively seek out and engage with the work of autistic self-advocates.
Right.
There are so many talented autistic writers, speakers, and activists who are sharing their stories, challenging stereotypes, and pushing for meaningful change. We can read their books, watch their presentations, follow them on social media, and learn from their lived experiences.
Yeah, and we can support organizations that are led by and for autistic people. these organizations are doing incredible work to promote, self-determination and access for the autistic community.
Exactly. By amplifying autistic voices and supporting autistic-led initiatives,
Yeah.
we can help to shift those power dynamics and create a more inclusive and equitable society for all.
It's been an incredible journey exploring these complex issues with you. I feel like we've just scratched the surface, but this deep dive has definitely given me and hopefully our listener a lot to think about and act upon.
Absolutely. Remember, this is just the beginning of your learning journey. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep advocating for a world that embraces and celebrates neurodiversity in all its forms.
We're so glad you joined us for this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to continue learning and engaging with these really important conversations. Thanks for listening.